What were your first thoughts when World War II was breaking out? Where were you when the conflict started?
You know, it was around close to Christmas time, and my parents, we lived in Wrightsville, Georgia, and we had gone to Augusta shopping. My mother, they were raised up around Jefferson County, which is not too far from Augusta, and Augusta was probably about as close as any place. But anyway, that was when the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor, and you know, Germany and Europe had been into it for quite some time, and it scared me, even though I was not of age to go into service at the time in 41.
How old were you?
Let's see, I was born in 1926. I was about, 15, 16?
You were still a kid.
Yeah, yeah. But it was a time of fear and anxiety. Just didn't know what was going to happen.
And where were you? The invasion of Normandy happened when you were still.
I was still at home. To be absolutely honest with you, I don't remember. I know that there was a lot of jubilation because we thought that might be the beginning of the end, and that was
Not the case.
yeah.
What were you drafted? Did you enlist?
No, I knew that I might be drafted. I enlisted in the Navy because I did not want to go to the Army. And I would come to Macon, Georgia, and join the Navy. I think it was around the latter part of July of 1944. But I was not sworn in until about the 14th of August, I believe it was. And that's when I went to boot camp, left Macon going to boot camp, and I was sworn in on the 14th of August.
Wow. August 1944.
Yeah.
That was a couple years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did you want to not end up in the Army?
Well, I just, I had seen a lot of newsreels about the Army and how they, I didn't want to be crawling around on the ground and in the mud, and you'd see all of these things, and I thought the Navy probably was the best thing. And I had a friend that I grew up with that lived right up the street from me that had joined the Navy, and he was home every other weekend. And I thought, boy, that's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to join the Navy so I can be home every other weekend. Well, that didn't happen to me. They sent me about as far away as I could get. I got to come home after boot camp, but as soon as that was over, I headed out.
You didn't come back.
I didn't come back till the war ended. That's right.
So those weekend trips, that didn't quite work out.
No, there's no weekend trips. Didn't work out.
And you might not have been crawling around in the mud and in the trenches, but you saw your share of combat.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was real. I was always afraid. Somebody asked me one time if I was afraid, and I think I was afraid all the time. I was in my battle station was in the magazine in the lower part of the ship. We were in the 5-inch ammunition, 5-inch gun mount ammunition storage area. We had to take the powder cans out of aluminum cans and send them up the hoist to the handling area right under the gun mount. And we did the projectiles. We'd send a powder can and a projectile and a powder can and so forth up into the handling room.
What was it like in the magazine area? What was it like? What did it sound like? What did it smell like?
Well, we were closed up. Every compartment aboard the ship is watertight. We had to close the hatches and make sure that it was closed and secured. We did have a PA system down there so that we could have some idea of what was going on. They would tell us all along what was going on, and we would have that.
Bet it was hot in there.
Well, we had air conditioning. Yeah, they moved air through there, and it's not too bad.
What
It was just close quarters, 3 people. We had 3 guys. That room was about the size of this living room, storage area.
And how young were you? How young were you?
I was 18 years old.
You're
Just-
so young. I mean, you've lived a full life. You are living a full life. You've got a lot more years than 18 on you now. Well, looking back on 18-year-old John Manning, were you able to comprehend what part of history you were a part of in that moment?
No, never did. Never thought about it.
Why not?
I don't know. It was just something that I felt like I had to do, to be a part of it. And I was not, I didn't think about what we were doing.
You just felt like you were called.
Yeah. Most of the men in our community were gone, that was of age to serve in the military. Most of them were already gone. And
Did you feel like you were there for a purpose? Did you feel like what you were fighting for was worth fighting for?
well, in a sense, I guess I did. I don't know that I really thought about it. I just knew that it was something I had to do. And looking back, I never regret doing it, even though I might not have thought about what I was doing. I knew I was going to have to serve one way or another, and that's the reason I chose the Navy.
And serve you did in some of the Pacific Theater's most intense battles.
Yeah. Iwo Jima and Okinawa, there were times that we spent, I think, up to 48 hours at our battle stations. They would have to bring some food around to our battle stations to feed us. They would bring us sandwiches and something to drink.
What was going through your mind in those moments?
I really don't know. It just, when you get 3 guys together, you talk a lot. And me and the 2 other guys that was in the magazine would talk and share with each other. One of the guys that was with us, I'm going to tell this little story. You may have to edit this out, but
No, that's what we want to hear.
but one of the guys had been a musician. A little old South Georgia boy, didn't know much about musicians. I'd heard the big bands, playing music and this kind of stuff, especially during the 40s, but this guy was a musician, and me and this other fella from North Carolina, we kept teasing this guy and asked him how he played. He said played the trumpet, and we asked him how he played the trumpet. Well, there's what we call a dog wrench, which we tighten the hatches down, the dogs down on the hatches that makes it secure. We tighten them down, and it's a piece of pipe about 8 inches long. And he grabs this piece of pipe and starts tooting his tune through that piece of pipe.
How'd he sound?
Well, it sounded pretty good. But anyway, that particular day, when we secured from our battle stations, I went up, it was almost lunchtime. I got in the chow line to go to lunch, and I was standing on the port side of the ship, and I heard somebody holler on the other side of the ship, "Man overboard." And I was at the hatch where I could run straight across to the other side of the ship. And there I get over there, and there's a corpsman standing there. And this man, I said, "What happened?" He said, he come to me and wanted something. And if he didn't give it to him, he was going to jump over the side. And I said, "Well, go ahead and jump." And said he jumped. So the man, and it happened to be this guy, trumpet player, that was in the magazine with us. But what had happened is he had been stealing the morphines out of the lifeboats and life rafts aboard the ship and injecting it for it to get high.
Oh no.
And nobody knew this except the pharmacist mate and this guy. And what they had been doing, they had been going and getting the first aid kits out of the lifeboats during normal operating time. But when we'd go to our battle stations, they would put the first aid kits back in the lifeboats and the life rafts. And when he went up to get some morphine, the first aid kits was gone.
He just jumped.
So he couldn't get his high. So he decided, but he got to go home. We had to go back and pick him up.
You had to turn the boat around and go get him?
Yeah, that's right. We had to go back and get him. Yeah.
Talking about the music and talking about that era, you know, the swing bands and the big bands, it's so, I mean, decades out now, you know, almost, I mean, it's 70 years ago. It's still so ingrained. I mean, even I remember, I can see the newsreels and I can hear that music. In your lifetime, how much has changed since then to now?
The information we got on the newsreels and radio was the only communications we got, or the only news that we were able to receive. And a lot of times it was 3 or 4 days old. And now it's, you can't even breathe without somebody knowing it.
Just about,
So,
right?
Yeah. So it's just changed so much.
And you've seen some incredible technological advances too. You
Oh, yeah.
the moon, commercial air travel, all of this.
Right. I remember the first jet I ever saw. And we were out in the Pacific just before the war ended. And I can remember seeing that plane. And it was going so fast, our computers would not keep up with it.
What'd you think seeing that?
I had no idea. We just stood in awe.
Yeah, that might have been the first jet you saw, but you saw a lot of planes. You were on a destroyer.
Well, I saw a lot of prop jobs.
Sure.
They were.
Kamikazes were a threat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How scary was that?
Yeah, Okinawa was I think the worst for kamikazes. It was nearer to the mainland of Japan than Iwo Jima was. I don't remember much about the kamikazes at Iwo Jima, but I do remember having to go to alerts very often during the Okinawan campaign.
And at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, you were part of the battery of those islands, the shelling of those islands.
Right, yeah.
I know most of the time you were at your station in the magazine, but occasionally you got to go up on deck.
Yeah.
What did you see up there?
Well, I couldn't see very much. I just, mostly other ships,
How describe? I mean, how many ships were out there in the ocean?
Oh,
How big
goodness,
was this?
goodness. We had, I have no idea how many ships. There were so many, and there were some smaller landing craft at Iwo Jima and Okinawa that was always in the, going into shore and this kind of thing.
And you, if not the last ship to open, to fire in World War II, you and your ship.
Well, we thought we had fired the last ship the day after the Japanese had surrendered. The day before my 19th birthday, we shot down a Japanese suicide bomber. He was approaching us, and we were trying to identify him as friend or foe, and could get no response. Had to ask for permission from the admiral of the unit that we were operating with for permission to shoot that plane down. And his response was, shoot him down in a friendly manner.
He really said that.
And we did, yeah.
I want to just peel that back a minute, because the day before, the war had ended, correct? The
Well,
Japanese had surrendered, excuse me.
they had surrendered on the 14th of August.
Okay.
But I don't think the Japanese emperor had announced it to his people until the 15th. And my birthday was on the 16th. So we shot the plane down on the 15th, which was the day before my birthday.
But on the 14th, you knew the Japanese had surrendered.
Right.
Describe that moment. Did someone get on the
Oh
intercom?
man, we were elated. They don't serve alcoholic beverages aboard ship in the Navy, but we did carry beer for if we went to a place like when we went to Guam for R&R. That was 2 or 3 days. They took beer aboard shore for us to drink, but they did get beer out for the crew to drink when they found out the Japanese had surrendered.
How'd that beer taste that day?
I didn't drink any. I could never drink beer. I didn't like beer. For some reason, the Lord just took that taste away from me, thank goodness. But I can't say I didn't drink some other stronger stuff, but I just never could had a taste for beer.
Did it ever cross your mind at all when this? You say this so calmly. It's incredible, but I gotta imagine you're about to turn 19. You're an 18-year-old kid. You just survived one of the nastiest theaters of combat in the history of the world, the Pacific Theater. The Japanese have surrendered. You think, all right, I made it. And the next day, there's a kamikaze flying at you with the intention to kill you. I can't even imagine the emotions in that moment.
Well, we were still in our combat mode, operating in our combat mode. Our duties were always 4 on and 4 off. We had stations that we manned every 4 hours or 24 hours a day, but each man was assigned a job that he had to do every 4 hours. He was 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. But we were still in that mode at that time.
So you were ready?
Yeah, we'd gone to our battle stations. Yep. As soon as they couldn't get identification, friend or foe, from the approaching aircraft, we went to our battle stations.
Did it ever cross your mind going to your battle stations thinking, man, I hope this is the last time I got to do this?
I don't know that I thought about that. It's
just doing your job.
Yeah.
When you look back at your time, and it was a USS Heermann.
Heermann, right. DD 532.
I bet you'll never forget that. When you look back on your time on that ship, what stands out to you the most in your memory? Was it the people you served with?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had a good crew. We had some good times, and we had some not so good times. I mean, just I can remember one time they had we got a bale of rags for cleaning up. You know, you clean your guns with rags and all kind of things you clean up. But we had gotten a bale of rags, and in that bale of rags was a woman's bathing suit.
How'd that get there?
Well, somebody threw it away, I guess. But anyway, it got in this bale of rags. And this young guy, about my age, fair skin, put that bathing suit on and filled up the spots. And let me tell you, I was afraid for his life. He looked so good to a bunch of sailors who had been at sea and not seen a woman in I don't know how long. But things like that. But things like that, you remember
life is kind of a collection of little moments in a lot of
Oh
ways,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I ask you these questions about, it's hard to put into words the big scope of everything, but
Yeah.
little moments stand out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were all kids.
Right. Right. We were all kids, and listen, I didn't know anything. I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I was growing up, my dad was a service manager at Ford Place in Wrightsville, Georgia. And I always thought that I'd wind up being an automobile mechanic. I guess that was the only thing I thought. I never thought about going to college to get a degree in any kind of field or whatever. Of course, I thought about it afterwards, but I don't know, maybe I was just dumb and
I don't know about that.
well, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure that I don't know when I grew up.
Do you think?
Or maybe after my first daughter was born, I grew up a little bit, but I'm not so sure that.
Did your experience in the Pacific in World War II change your life?
Oh yeah, yeah.
How so?
Well, like I said, I had no direction at all until after World War II. In my life, I just assumed that I was going to always be an automobile mechanic. I had done that during the summer, working with my dad and that kind of thing, and I just assumed that that's where I'd wind up being. But after the war was over, I began to look for other areas. I went to school studying accounting. I thought I wanted to be a CPA, and I was trying to do that.
Was that on the GI Bill?
Yeah, right. Listen, they had, right after the war, or after the World War II, they had what I don't know what the government called it, but they had, what we called it was the 5220 Club.
And what was that?
That was where you could draw $20 a week for 52 weeks as long as you was unemployed and, looking for work. I drew one check.
Just one?
One check. Because I went to school. I started to school on GI Bill right away.
That's an interesting... Do you think, we call y'all the greatest generation. Do you think that's accurate? Do you think that's a fair moniker?
I really don't know. I think so, because I think we were different people back then. That I think we were more patriotic than we are today. I think we were more. The war united the people in this country. World War II united the people in this country more than any other thing before or after, I think. Because we all had a common goal, is to be free. And we knew that if Germany or Japan took us over, that we would never be a free country anymore.
You guys are a bunch of 18-year-old kids who saved the world.
Yeah. Well.
It's a life well lived. When you were real determined not to make this about you. You wanted to make it about everyone. You didn't.
Yeah, right.
Why was that so important to you?
Well, it's because we did it. I didn't do it. We did it. There are some people who were outstanding people, but I say that we all did it. It was not I did this or I did that, but it was a common thing. We all had a common goal, and we all worked for it.
Oh boy. You had some commendations yourself, though, didn't you? Combat stars?
3 battle stars. Yeah. One for Iwo Jima, one for Okinawa, and one for the Empire raids and bombardment.
They don't come cheap. You got to earn those.
Wow.
But you did it with we, right?
Yeah, we. That's right, we.
Well, let me ask you a question from my generation to you. I'm a couple years younger than you, I think.
Yeah. You're 1 or 2.
1 or 2. What's the secret? What do we need now? What does my generation need to learn from you?
I don't know. I think we need a common commitment. I worry about our country. It seems to be everybody's offended by somebody else. I don't know. Maybe I feel like we need to just stand up and take life as it is, you know, and not blame the other fella for the situations that we're in sometimes. I may be wrong, but it seems like we want to blame somebody else for everything that's going on.
Well, your generation certainly stepped up.
I think so. I think so.
You said those neighborhoods, you know,
Yeah.
military-age men.
Well, you take the manufacturing capabilities just exploded during World War II. They were able
to.
Right. They
That
stood up
was
and did it. And, you know, women were kind of in the background up until World War II. But they had to step up because all of the able-bodied men were going off to war, and the women had to step up and do the work.
And they sure did.
Yeah, and they did it. Thank goodness.
When you look back, I want to ask you one last question here, and then we'll touch on some other stuff. But is there one moment, is there any single moment from your time in World War II that stands out to you?
No, not really. I guess the surrender, Japanese surrender and European surrender are the 2 things that stand out most in my mind. But other than that, I don't know of any particular thing I can.
What was the first thing you did when you got back to the United States?
You know, I guess I wanted a glass of milk. You know, aboard ship, we always had powdered milk. I loved milk, and I wanted a good glass of milk. And that was one of the things that they brought to the ship when we got into Vancouver, Washington, after the war ended, was milk. And they brought it in 5-gallon metal jugs, cans.
How good did that milk taste?
Whew.
That good?
Best stuff I ever had.
Oh man, Mr.
Now
Milley,
that's trivial, I know, but that's probably I hadn't even thought about it until you asked the question then, but I guess that was it.
well, we say life's a collection of little moments, right?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that makes it. Is there anything I didn't touch on here that you want to bring up that you think is important? You think people should know?
No, I think our belief in God and country. I think sometimes we may be lacking in that today. That I think it needs to be worked on.
Are you optimistic?
Oh yeah, I'm optimistic. I worry about things, but I am optimistic that I see good things. You know, we hear so much negative things on the news, but there are some good things going on, and I am optimistic that somebody's going to stand up and.
Do you think my generation we might be able to pull it off?
I believe so. I believe if we're called upon to do it, I think we can do it. I really do. I heard a guy the other day, a World War II veteran that was at Normandy on the news somewhere. He said if he could, he'd go back again because he felt like he could kick butt right on.
Do you feel that way?
I think so. Yeah.
If you had to do it all over again.
Yeah. If we could do it after lunch, you know. No, I'm kidding about that.
But truly, if that's an interesting question. Rewind your life all the way back to.
Oh, I don't regret at all, and I think I would do it again. Yeah. Placed in the same circumstances, I think I would do it again.
And you had a family at that time, right, when you went back to Korea?
Yes, I was married and had a child.
Oh.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, honey, when I was recalled, I thought we had just bought a house and a car. We lost the house and lost the car. My wife and child had to stay with her folks and my folks while I was away, what time she was not with me. And it was a difficult time. We thought that the world had come to an end. But in retrospect, it's probably the best thing ever happened to us.
Why?
Well, my life would have been so different if I had not been recalled during the Korean thing, because I came to Warner Robins after I got out of service and got a job there. And I worked at the base for 20 years, and I would not have, I would have been sitting behind a desk in Dublin, Georgia, eking out a living.
So you'd been to school and you had a family at that point before you went to Korea, right?
I'm sorry?
You had gone through college and then also had a family at that point before you were sent off to Korea.
I had gone to business school, yes, right.
What did you end up doing at the base for all those years? What was your job?
I was working in electronics, and later years I worked in production management.
You retired from the base when?
In 1982.
Wow. My goodness. 2 daughters, you said?
2 daughters.
2 grandsons.
2 grandsons. One daughter's 69 years old, and the other one's, I better not tell all this. Other one's 64. Other one's 64.
Do you think your family's proud of what you did?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I made a trip to Washington, D.C. to see the memorials, and I made it not with the honor flight, but with another group out of Augusta, Georgia, called Vet to Washington program, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, when I was given an opportunity to go, I could take somebody with me. My wife planned for my wife and I to go, and she told me, she says, if BG, my oldest grandson, wants to go, says, why don't you call Doug and ask him if it's all right, and I'll just stay home and he can go with you. So I called him, and he says, oh yeah, he can go. Says, and your wife can still go. He can go and help push wheelchairs and this kind of thing. So I said, okay. So I called BG, and he said, oh yeah, I'd like to go. And then my wife says, well, if he's going to do that, says, why don't you call see if you can't take the youngest grandson as your roommate. I said, okay. I called him and said, hey, oh yeah. Says he can go too. Says we'll use him. So my two grandsons were able to go with me on that trip to Washington to see the memorials, and this was especially to see the World War II memorial. And that was a real blessing to me. The boys got to fellowship with a bunch of other veterans, and on a bus trip. We made a bus trip up. This Vet to Washington program furnishes a bus trip and 2 nights in a hotel, free of charge. All you have to do is buy your lunch and whatever else you need, you know. But wonderful trip. My 2 grandsons will never forget it.
I'm sure you won't either.
Yeah.
How important is it for the next generation to learn from yours, from what y'all did?
Well, I think there's a great deal. I think it's very important that they see that, see the patriotism and the desire to serve. And
you know, that's why we want to talk to you today. So that's why we appreciate you so much,
yeah.
taking the time to do this.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to, because I think it's a needed thing that I love for the younger generation, and I would encourage any young person, whatever they do in life, ought to keep a journal.
Why do you think that? Because I agree, but I want to hear why.
Because, well, there's so many things that happens in people's lives that may be forgotten, and it should never be forgotten. Some things should never be forgotten.
In a way, this is kind of a journal entry.
Yeah.
What we're talking about right now.
Yeah. We had a couple of guys aboard ship that kept a journal, and every day they would make an entry in their journal. We were so and so at this time and this kind of thing.
Do you keep a journal?
No.
How come?
I was too dumb. Too dumb to even think about something like that. But I think that's a wonderful idea. I think everybody ought to do that. You know, when I was growing up, girls kept diaries. That was not a boy thing, you know. But I think you can call it anything you want to. And I think you ought to call it a journal.
Well, it's not too late. You could start one now.
Yeah. Well, my life's almost an open book anyway, so.